The sun had barely risen over the quiet suburban neighborhood when chaos shattered the peace. For most residents, it was just another morning, a time for walking dogs, sipping coffee, and preparing for the day's routines. But in one corner of the cul-de-sac, things took a deadly turn. Karen Holloway, known by many in the neighborhood as the overbearing president of the Homeowners Association, often whispered about as HOA Karen, had long been a source of tension in the community. Her aggressive enforcement of neighborhood rules, her confrontations with anyone she deemed unfit for the subdivision's aesthetic, and her relentless reports to local authorities had made her a feared figure. Her latest conflict, however, had taken root in an even more sensitive space. It involved a new family who had moved in only months before. The Rivera family had purchased the modest corner house, seeking a calm place to care for their daughter, Lila, who was 14 years old and born with cerebral palsy. Her condition required regular care, and her mother, Anna Rivera, had quit her job to be with her full-time. Their home was outfitted with a wheelchair ramp and sensory garden, built in accordance with county permits. Yet from the moment they moved in, Karen took issue with everything. At first, it was small things. A complaint about the ramp being unsightly, a warning letter about garden decorations being non-compliant, and finally, repeated calls to the HOA about imagined nuisances. Anna did her best to comply, even removing some of the garden features and repainting the front door in a more muted tone after Karen claimed it was too bright. But despite her efforts, Karen only escalated. Her surveillance camera, perched on the corner of her house, was pointed directly at the Rivera's front yard. Neighbors speculated she recorded everything, especially when she began approaching Anna in public, accusing her of breaking HOA rules that didn't even exist. Anna tried to ignore her. Her focus was Lila, making sure her daughter's needs were met, taking her to therapy, keeping her on a routine that provided comfort and safety. Lila had grown to love the house. She liked to sit near the window, humming to herself as she watched the breeze move through the trees. That window became her safe place. But things took a turn when, in early May, Karen left a note on the Rivera's front door, typed and sealed in a plastic sleeve. Failure to remove unauthorized access ramp within 10 days will result in HOA enforcement action. Anna was livid. The ramp was built legally, with a permit, and required for her daughter's mobility. She called the HOA board directly and was told that Karen had acted unilaterally, again. The HOA had no authority to override ADA protections. But the board, tired of her constant aggression, did nothing more than send her a mild warning. Karen, unbothered, seemed to double down. On the morning it happened, Anna was in the kitchen preparing Lila's breakfast. Lila was near the front window in her wheelchair, wrapped in her favorite blanket, humming the tune to a children's show. Outside, Karen was pacing her front yard, arms flailing, phone pressed to her ear. Anna noticed her but thought little of it, until she heard something that would haunt her forever. A single gunshot. The sound was sharp, unnatural, and immediate. Glass shattered. Anna screamed. When she ran into the living room, what she saw made time collapse. Lila slumped in her chair, a red bloom spreading across her temple, shards of the window glass around her. Anna dropped to her knees, screaming her daughter's name. Her hands trembled as she called 911, her voice cracking, begging for help. The operator tried to calm her, but the words were distant. Sirens blared in the distance. Within minutes, deputies arrived quickly. One of the responding officers recognized Anna from previous noise complaints filed by Karen. He moved swiftly into the home while others secured the perimeter. Paramedics began life-saving procedures on Lila, who was somehow still breathing. As they rushed her to the hospital, deputies turned to the obvious suspect. Karen was still outside. The smoking barrel of .38 revolver sat on her front porch table, next to a glass of sweet tea. Her hands were trembling, but her face showed no remorse. She muttered something about a threat and property protection. She claimed she thought she saw a gun in the window. But there was no gun. Only a 14-year-old girl with a disability, watching birds with a blanket on her lap. The investigation that followed revealed a disturbing pattern. Karen had filed over 30 complaints against the Riveras in less than 6 months. Her surveillance footage, recovered from her DVR, showed she had been fixated on the family. She had even recorded private moments, zooming in through the window where Lila sat. There were no threats, No provocations, just a steady, obsessive documentation of the girl and her family. The local sheriff, L.M. Corbett, held a press conference the next day. His face was grim as he spoke to reporters. "This is not only a tragedy," he said, "it's a deeply disturbing example of what can happen when personal prejudice, unchecked authority, and firearms come together. Our department is committed to a full investigation, and if charges are warranted, they will be pursued to the fullest extent." The neighborhood was in shock. No one had believed Karen was capable of actual violence. Annoying, yes. Overbearing, definitely. But this, a shot fired through a window, into the head of a disabled child. Protests erupted outside the county courthouse. Disability rights groups, outraged citizens, and neighbors who had once stayed silent now demanded justice. The phrase, "Say her name, Lila Rivera," began trending. The sheriff's office confirmed that Karen Holloway was being held on charges of attempted murder, aggravated assault, and reckless endangerment. More charges were likely, pending Lila's condition. Anna stayed by her daughter's hospital bed, praying every hour. The bullet had fractured Lila's skull, and she had slipped into a coma. Doctors weren't sure if she would ever wake up, and if she did, what quality of life she would have. Karen remained in custody without bail. Her attorney issued a statement that she was deeply remorseful and claimed mental instability. But the community wasn't buying it. Too much footage, too many witnesses, too many warnings, and yet, none of them had stopped her. The signs were all there. Neighbors had seen her spiral, but they hadn't acted. The HOA had the power to remove her from leadership, but they hadn't voted. The system, many said, had failed the Riveras. And now, the price had been paid by an innocent girl who simply wanted to watch the wind move through the trees. Lila's room in the pediatric intensive care unit was quiet, filled only with the steady beeping of machines and the gentle hum of the ventilator that helped her breathe. The pale light from the window cast soft shadows across her bandaged head. Anna sat by her daughter's side, eyes red, fingers interlaced with Lila's motionless hand. Days had passed since the shooting, but for Anna, time had blurred into a haze of pain, waiting, and desperate hope. Outside the hospital, the world was changing. What began as local outrage had grown into national attention. News vans lined the streets. Reporters camped outside the county courthouse. Hashtags filled social media. Hashtag justice for Lila, hashtag end HOA abuse, and hashtag disability rights now. The narrative was no longer just about one deranged neighbor. It became a symbol of something deeper, how society fails to protect its most vulnerable, and how unchecked power, even in the hands of someone like a neighborhood association president, can lead to tragedy. Sheriff L.M. Corbett was at the center of it all. A career lawman known for his straight-shooting demeanor and public transparency, Corbett felt the full weight of the case. The day after the press conference, he called an emergency meeting with county prosecutors and his senior detectives. The evidence was overwhelming. Karen's surveillance tapes, dozens of official complaints with thinly veiled discriminatory language, and witness statements from neighbors who had seen her brandishing a firearm in her yard weeks before the incident. But there was also a more troubling discovery. Investigators had found a private journal in Karen's home, filled with long, erratic writings. Many entries fixated on the Riveras. She described Lila as unnatural and a blight on our neighborhood's tranquility. She believed the girl, watched her through the window to provoke her. The journal grew more paranoid with time, each entry darker, until one chilling line read, "If no one will do something, I must." Detectives determined she had purchased the revolver 3 months prior. She was not legally prohibited from owning a firearm, and she had concealed her mental instability well enough to pass a background check. There had been no official red flags, no domestic violence record, no psychiatric holds. Just a steady, invisible descent into delusion. Prosecutor Dana Liu, known for her firm stance on hate crimes, began preparing her case. The most difficult decision wasn't whether to charge Karen. She would face multiple felony counts. It was how to define what happened. Was it a hate crime? A targeted act against a person with a disability? Or was it simply reckless, impulsive violence? Liu leaned toward the former. The volume of Karen's recorded harassment was more than enough to prove intent, but she wanted more. She wanted to show that what happened to Lila wasn't just violence, it was part of a broader systemic failure. Anna, meanwhile, had not left the hospital. Her husband, Miguel, had flown in from San Diego, where he worked long hours as a commercial painter to support the family. He collapsed into tears when he saw Lila. The two of them stood together in the sterile room, clinging to one another, praying that their daughter would pull through. Every small twitch of Lila's hand, every tiny movement, brought a new wave of hope and dread. Then, one morning, Lila opened her eyes. It was brief, a flicker. Her eyelids fluttered, unfocused, then closed again. But it was enough to send a ripple of emotion through the family and the hospital staff. The doctors cautioned that it wasn't a guarantee of recovery. There could be permanent damage, but Anna felt something shift inside her. Her little girl was still there. Somewhere deep beneath the pain, Lila was fighting. Word spread fast. Outside the hospital, vigil attendees lit candles and tied blue and white ribbons, Lila's favorite colors, to the trees lining the sidewalk. The sheriff's office issued a statement of cautious optimism, and Anna, for the first time since the shooting, released a message through her lawyer. "My daughter is strong. She is kind, gentle, and full of life. She did not deserve what happened. None of this was ever about neighborhood rules. It was about hate. I won't stop until justice is served, not just for Lila, but for every child with a disability who deserves to be safe in their own home." The message sparked even more momentum. Advocacy groups began pushing for legislation, laws to prevent HOA abuse, require better screening for firearm purchases, and expand protections for disabled individuals in residential communities. One such bill, the Lila Protection Act, was drafted with bipartisan support in the state legislature within 2 weeks of the shooting. Back in the county jail, Karen Holloway awaited her arraignment. Her attorney continued to push for a psychiatric evaluation, hoping to use mental illness as a defense. But Karen remained largely silent, speaking only in cryptic mutters to herself. In an interview with a forensic psychologist, she claimed the girl in the window was staring at her with judgment, and that it was all a test. The psychologist concluded that she likely suffered from a severe delusional disorder, but also stated that she had the capacity to understand the consequences of her actions. Public opinion was unforgiving. Protesters held signs outside the courthouse that read, "No excuses for hate," and "Mental illness is not a license to kill." The judge, aware of the national scrutiny, denied bail. Karen was to remain in custody pending trial. As the weeks passed, Lila's condition slowly stabilized. She remained nonverbal, her movement limited, but doctors saw signs of neural response. Her therapists began gentle sensory exercises. Anna never left her side. She read to her, played music, held her hand through every session. The community rallied around them. Meals were delivered daily, neighbors donated to a medical fund, and a local artist painted a mural in town depicting Lila surrounded by butterflies, her wheelchair transformed into wings. Justice was now on the horizon. Prosecutor Dana Liu announced formal charges: attempted murder with a firearm, aggravated assault, use of a deadly weapon with intent to harm a disabled person, and hate-motivated violence under state disability rights statutes. Karen faced a maximum sentence of life in prison. The day of the arraignment, Anna and Miguel sat quietly in the courtroom. Karen, now thinner and pale, was brought in wearing a jail-issued jumpsuit. She looked around the room, eyes vacant. As the judge read the charges, she said nothing. Not guilty pleas were entered on her behalf. Outside, the crowd was silent, holding candles and pictures of Lila. No chants, no shouting, just quiet determination. Anna stepped to the podium set up for press and said just one sentence: "My daughter will speak again one day, and when she does, the world will listen." And with that, she turned and walked away, holding Miguel's hand, the path to justice laid out before them, long, painful, but no longer silent.